Hello and welcome to episode 52 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty, and I am just so excited for the next two episodes. Today's show marks the 1-year anniversary of the podcast. To celebrate the occasion, the two most frequent contributors to the show will be joining me as we just share our love of the Disney parks. Sarah from Seattle and Marisa from Chicago are two of my absolute favorite people in the community, and we'll be spending the next two episodes discussing how we all found ourselves becoming members of that community. After that, my wife Courtney will be here for a dining review of Cityworks Eatery and Poorhouse at Disney Springs in Walt Disney World. I have two major goals this year. One is to continue to grow this podcast, so please like, comment, and subscribe. My other goal is to embark on an almost 2-month-long, 620-mile pilgrimage on the Ireland Way later this year. In addition to the spiritual, mental, and physical benefits I'll be gaining with this walk, I'm also using it as a way to raise money and awareness for the nonprofit Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence. In the description, you'll find a link to donate to my efforts. It would mean the world to me if you would join us in assisting this great organization doing important work. Of course, don't forget to follow along on social media, facebook.com/ear-to-there-rick, twitter.com/Rick_ear, Instagram.com/RickEar2there, and twitter.com/TGTTpodcast. Go there for videos, live streams, blogs, pictures, and even giveaways. I'll also have more information about a giveaway later in this episode. Now let's welcome our two very good friends, Marisa and Sarah, to the show. First, Sarah, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
And you too, Marisa. We really appreciate you sort of having to get the time together so that everybody could be on at the same time. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm just so glad we could make this work. I'm so excited.
So the first thing I wanted to start with is, when did your love for the Disney parks start? What are some of your earliest memories with going to the Disney parks, whether they be Walt Disney World or Disneyland? Let's start with you, Sarah.
I mean, of course, I grew up watching it all the time. My first time going to a park, though, I was 3 years old and we went to Disneyland. Yeah, I remember some things from it, of course, and other things I definitely don't. But I look at pictures now and I'm like, oh, that looked like it was fun. But I didn't go to Disney World until I was 11 because I went with a friend of the family and all their kids and everything, which was awesome. But yeah, definitely Disneyland at 3.
So what about you, Marisa?
So similarly, I also went to Disneyland first, and I went there when I was almost 5. And that was like my first trip to any sort of theme park, which was really exciting. And then it was Disney on top of that. You know, of course, had seen the movies and was super into it. And I remember a decent amount. I think having that extra year probably helps with remembering some stuff. But then I didn't end up going to Disney World until I was 8. So that also was a little bit later.
So that's interesting because my first trip to Walt Disney World was when I was 5 years old, but we went basically every other year. We went 5 times between me being 5 years old and me being 12 years old. And a lot of those trips kind of mesh together. Like, I have memories from those early trips, but I can't remember which one was from when I was 5, which one was from when I was 8. But I do have a lot of memories, especially like of old school Epcot, of the original Imagination ride with Figment, and some of those things that I know that I got to experience. I just can't remember, is that memory from when I was 5 or when I was 12? It just sort of all ran together there for a little while. So Marisa, you kind of surprised me with your answer because I didn't realize that you started at Disneyland. Did you go a number of times when you were younger, or was that trip at 5 years old, was that like a one and done for you?
So I actually have family in San Diego. So they're not too far away. And so a few times when we'd visit them, we would take a day and go up to Disneyland. So I've been to Disneyland 3 or 4 times in total. but I've never actually done a dedicated Disneyland vacation. It's always been just like, okay, we're going to go take a day and try to get as much in as we possibly can. So because of that, I've only done California Adventure once. So there's a lot I'm missing out there, but there's also a lot I have done. It's a weird kind of middle ground.
So starting off as somebody who did a lot of Disneyland early on in your life and now goes to Walt Disney World so frequently, where do you find most of your memories are between the two parks? Do you find that most of your really great Disney memories are at Walt Disney World because you go there more often, or because you started at Disneyland, is that where you have your nostalgia?
That's an impossible question. That's so tough. I feel like both parks are very nostalgic to me in very different ways. Like there are very iconic memories I have of experiences at each park that are so different. Like, for example, when I was like almost 5 and we went to Disneyland, that's when we did the tea with Mary Poppins. At I think it was the Grand Californian Hotel, like hosted it. And as a Mary Poppins kid, that was my big movie as a kid. Like I would play Mary Poppins during the day. That was like my thing. I'd be like, you're calling me Mary. I am Mary Poppins. So to actually go meet Mary Poppins was like, I mean, that's still one of my favorite memories of all time. But then, you know, you flip it, you go to Disney World, and that's when I was finally like brave enough to actually try roller coasters. So that's the first place I went on Big Thunder. And so that's such an iconic memory for me. And thinking about that experience and trying Space Mountain for the first time, like it's so difficult because they're all so great in totally different ways. So I'm not answering that. I'm cheating.
That's such a funny memory that you have of watching Mary Poppins over and over again, because apparently, from what my mother tells me, when I was in kindergarten, I got the chicken pox and had to stay home from school, and all I would let her put on was Mary Poppins. I just watched it the entire time I was home from school with the chicken pox. So we sort of have that kind of memory in common, except for yours was less itchy. So, Sarah, this is almost the reverse question for you, because you did go to Disneyland first, and Disneyland is basically your home park, being on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So what are your earliest memories of the Disney parks? Because I think around the time about 11 years old is really when those childhood memories really start kicking in, where you remember more detail. And that's when you went to Walt Disney World. So why don't you talk about comparing the two when you were younger?
Yeah. So after I went my first time when I was 3, it was really similar to what Marissa was saying. I have family in Southern California as well, and we'd go visit them basically every summer. We had a mix of full vacations to Disney, and then we had a mix of we're visiting family and we're going to smash it all into one day. So it was go as much as you can, as quick as you can, right? I'm not going to lie, mine's not. I didn't have a Mary Poppins tea, unfortunately, but I do remember when I was 3 that I was absolutely horrified of any character in a suit. I would not go near any of them. And the pictures are so funny because there's one of me with Cinderella's mice, and I literally am just like holding its hand and like glaring at it. Like, if you come any closer to me, I'm going to scream or bite you. And my mom said the only character that I would go to on my own without any kind of like, hey, go, your sister's going, was Minnie Mouse. Like, I guess the minute I saw her, I just was like beeline straight to Minnie, and I was okay. But anybody with a face was fine. I also met Johnny Appleseed. That's one that was really interesting. He was a character I have been looking now. I actually saw in my time hop for 3 years for this picture of me with Cinderella and Johnny Appleseed, because when I went in, it was 87, they had this big setup that was like a big wood hut, and it just had this random menagerie of characters. And so it was really bizarre. I mean, King John was there, and then like Cinderella, Johnny Appleseed, Minnie, Mickey, Pluto, all those. It was just bizarre. So I remember that. That's one part that really stands out in my mind that I remember from Disneyland. And then of course, as I got older, right, remembering, okay, now I'm ready to go on roller coasters. Now I'm ready to do this. So to move to Disney World, I have a lot of memories of my first time there versus like my first time at Disneyland. And I remember, let's see, Animal Kingdom wasn't open yet. I had the worst time ever at the water parks because I don't like water parks. But I do remember I loved the Haunted Mansion there. I loved, like, the family that I was with was amazing. They had a ton of kids. So and I remember the extraterrestrial alien encounter. I don't know if you guys ever wrote that one, but that was interesting.
So, Marissa, I'm going to assume that you are too young for the extraterrestrial alien encounter. Am I correct?
I've never done that one. No.
It turned
I've heard
into
a lot about
Stitch's Great Escape, I think is what it was called after that.
It did become Stitch's Great Escape. So, funnily enough, I am not a thrill seeker. So, I don't do drops. We've talked about having issues with stuff like Tower of Terror and Mission Breakout and things like that. As a kid, I would be petrified to go on any roller coaster I thought might have a drop, but I did extraterrestrial alien encounter like it was nothing. I wasn't scared of being scared. I just didn't want to feel weightless. So I did this ride every time we were there and it existed as a scared child. So that's just a funny little side note. So Sarah, I kind of wanted to know, when you grew up going to Disneyland with your earliest memories and visiting family down there, and that was your home park, even at the age of 11, were you stunned by how big Walt Disney World is in comparison?
I remember we stayed off property just because then there wasn't a lot on property yet, hotel wise, right? But yeah, I remember walking down Main Street the first time in Magic Kingdom, and it was just, I was floored when I saw the castle because it's huge compared to the Sleeping Beauty castle. It's humongous. And I remember because my friends that I was with, they had been there, and because they had family in Florida. That's why one of the reasons we were there, right? And I looked at them and they're looking at me like, what? And I'm like, do you see this? It's humongous. And like Epcot too, actually. I remember walking into the World Showcase in Epcot and just being amazed. And I think that started my love of Epcot, was the first time I ever went, is seeing all of it and just being able to walk around and experience all the different cultures and everything. It was so cool. And yeah, it was amazing. And it also was very tiring because I was not used to walking that far.
I think that was how I realized I was getting older and more mature when we went when I was 12 years old. I remember we laid out the days we were going to be at which of the 3 parks, and we had only scheduled a half day at Epcot, and we had a day and a half at MGM Studios, and the rest of the time we were spending at Magic Kingdom. And I remember harping on my parents, we're only going to Epcot for half a day, right? Like, we're going to do these other parks more. But when we were at Epcot for half a day, I was like, I don't want to leave. That was when I realized that I was starting to understand Epcot and get a better grasp of it. Marissa, when you started going, were there 3 parks at Walt Disney World?
No, there were always the 4. But, to my family, there might as well have been 3 because they basically wrote off Animal Kingdom and we would kind of go in and do like a half day and get out, which is why I always wrote off Animal Kingdom until I gave it like a real chance. And we all know how that turned out. And now I'm like the biggest Animal Kingdom fan ever. So definitely went back to my parents and was like, guys, what were you thinking? This park is great. And when we all went back a few years later as adults, I made them give it like a real shot. Now, even now, like when we talk about the parks, they'll still be like, man, that Animal Kingdom was really fun. Yeah, it is.
So that brings me to the next thing I wanted to discuss, because there is definitely a transition from being a kid going to the Disney theme parks, and then a lot of people just drop off and never go back ever again. Maybe if they have kids, they go back with the kids at some point. But a lot of people give up on the theme parks after a certain age. Obviously, the 3 of us all came back to the parks as adults, but Sarah, did you ever have a time where you just weren't doing the parks, where they weren't a part of your life?
No, actually, there was never really a break. If I was visiting family, we'd always seem to make time to go. As an adult, it's definitely gotten more spread out, but of course, the cost is a lot higher now than it was back then. Is more spread out, but there's never been more than a year or two break, maybe 3 years, that we haven't gone to the parks, at least for a day when we've been in California.
How about you, Marissa? Did you ever have that teenage angsty period where you didn't go to Walt Disney World or Disneyland?
There's definitely a time period where I wasn't going to the parks, but it wasn't necessarily because it was my choice. There was a point in time where we had done Disneyland a couple times, we did Universal, and we had done Disney World all kind of close together. And I think my family got kind of like theme park fatigued, and they were like, okay, let's take a break, let's stop this. And then we didn't go back to Disneyland for like 7 or 8 years. And then after that, they still were like, "Nah, it's just not worth it to go back to Disney World. It's just not worth it." So then I didn't go back to Disney World from the time I was 9 until the time I was 21 after I graduated college. That was like my big, like, I was the opposite of the theme park angst kid where I was like, I want to get back to Disney. I'm saving up to go to Disney when I graduate college. This is going to be my big thing. And that just kind of hurtled me into where I am now, where I'm like, I just want to go back as much as I possibly can. When I did take a break, it wasn't necessarily because I wanted to take a break, but I also get it.
After that time, my family went when I was 12 years old. Then all of a sudden, you start getting into high school and sports and all of the things that you have going on at that period of your life. So it wasn't that we necessarily didn't go to Disney. It was just we were way too busy with everything going on in my life. And I didn't end up going back until I was 25 years old. This is kind of a funny story because my friend at the time went to Walt Disney World with his wife on their honeymoon. And it was still when you just bought days worth of tickets and they were good forever. And somebody in her family died while they were on their honeymoon and they had to leave early. So he still had 3 days on both tickets. And after they got divorced, he still had those 3 days left on the ticket, and Disney was about to change their ticket policy, so you had to use those tickets or lose them. So he said, hey, why don't we go down to Florida? We'll do spring training baseball games, and then the 3 days that we have these theme park tickets, we'll go to Epcot, we'll go to Magic Kingdom, and they have this new one now called Animal Kingdom, and we'll go there. So I went a really long time without going and then went back as an adult, and it kickstarted my love again because I was seeing the parks in a completely different way. But I still didn't go back for another decade, and after that I've been going, obviously. I mean, I go every week now, so it's not...
You've made up for lost time.
I have made up for lost time, definitely. I know recently both of you have done your first solo trips to Disney parks. So Marissa, why don't you start and talk about your first solo trip to Walt Disney World?
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. And I just went this past May, and it was one of those things where I had a plane ticket I had to use, and I was looking to see, okay, where am I going to go? I was like, well, I have an annual pass, so maybe I should look at going to Disney. And then the hotel was super cheap. And so I couldn't pass it up, but then it didn't work with any of my friends to come with me. And I was like, well, that's fine. I'll just go alone. And I was a little nervous going into it because, it's Disney World's a huge place and you're there alone. And I was a little bit like, oh, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll like it. Maybe I won't. Because part of, I think, the fun of a Disney vacation is sharing those memories with the people you're there with and being able to make those memories together. But boy, was it fun. It was a totally different experience. I felt totally safe, which I was very grateful for. And even though I didn't have anyone to share the memories with, it was so much fun making them still. I still had so much fun being there and just getting to say, like, you know what, I feel like doing this today, and just doing it. And like, saying spur of the moment, I'm supposed to be in Magic Kingdom today, but you know what? I really want to try some of the foods at Epcot that I didn't get to yesterday. So I'm going to head there instead. And it's just a very unique way to experience the parks that if it's something feasibly you can do, I recommend it. It's cool.
How did you find the way you did the parks changed when you did it by yourself?
I meandered a lot more. I was a lot less purposeful about what I was doing and when I was doing it. I'm typically, the park person who's like, we're doing this and then we're doing this and we're getting every moment of time accounted for because we're here and I'm not wasting it. But this trip, it was more laid back and I was more like, you know what? I'm just going to sit on a bench and enjoy the tree of life. I'm just going to sit here and look out at the lagoon. And it was just so nice and a very, very unique experience that I don't know when I'll have that again. It was great.
And now, Sarah, I know your solo trip to Disneyland wasn't quite as solo as Marissa's because there were people just bothering you the entire time. And I did actually eat with Marissa at Tiffin's during her solo trip. So I bothered her as well on her solo trip.
It was very welcome.
But Sarah, why don't you talk about yours and what it was like for the first time as an adult heading down there by yourself and how that experience was different from some of the other times you've been there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've flown by myself a ton, all that, right? I think it really hit me that I was soloing that trip when I walked from the hotel, got to the gates, got in there because there was no line to get in. You just walked in, right? And by the time that I got there, but actually taking the time to enter Main Street and come around, because you come around like where the train station is, and walking down Main Street by myself and not being with a group of people or one other person where it's like you're trying to set your plan and beeline to wherever you're going to go, having that time to actually like enjoy, oh my gosh, like I'm just kind of like Marissa said, meandering around. And because I was waiting for you and Courtney to finish on Rise, and it's like, well, I already know I'm going to have to walk all the way across the park to meet you guys. So it's like, might as well take my time. And so it was really cool to have that where I'm like, oh, cool. I'm just going to, mosey on down Main Street and look at the castle. And it just so happened that the band was coming out right as I was heading down. And so I was able to, not have to tell everyone, hey, stop. I want to watch this. I just stopped and I watched it and I walked down a little further and then went around into a few shops just because I could. And for a minute, it was kind of sad for me because it was like, oh, I wish my husband were here to see this. I wish my son was with me. I wish my parents and my sister were with me. But then at the same time, I'm like, but now I don't have to cattle people around the whole vacation. So it was, I don't know if liberating is the right word, but it's like Marissa said too, it's something I feel everyone should do once in their life is go to some kind of Disney park by yourself, because it's true. You just notice more and you pay a lot more attention to things that when you're in a hurry, you don't see.
At some point in the future, I want to do an episode with Marissa where we do the whole childless Disney adult conversation. But even Sarah, who is not childless, what do you think has kept you interested in Disney as you've become an adult? What are the things that have continued to spark that interest in going, in being willing to go by yourself, to have these parks still be such a big part of your life into adulthood? What keeps you coming back to the parks?
This is a tough question. I've never really thought about it. I mean, the comfort of the parks, it's something that makes me happy. It is someplace I feel safe. I guess in the time that I've gone through my whole life, especially Disneyland, like I know it really well. I am very comfortable there. I've never had a time there that I was uncomfortable or scared or anything like that. And so, yeah, I think it's just that feeling of familiar, however you say that, being familiar with it. That was a big word. But the feeling of being familiar with the surroundings. I don't mind change. I don't mind the change the parks have. So it's always fun that when you don't get to go all the time, it's like, oh my gosh, this is different. Like getting to see Star Wars. And it was really cool to like be like, oh, I'm surprised every time I go because there's something new that I get to see.
And what about you, Marissa?
I think that's perfect. There is that like, it's so familiar and it's so comforting. But then, like you said, there's new things all the time too. And, there's always something to look forward to. Like I was just talking the other day about how excited I am to see the Guardians of the Galaxy coaster open at Disney World. I'm like, there's always something that you're looking forward to. And I'm not as familiar with Disneyland, but I know for Disney World too, there's so much food. This is one thing too that I've realized as I can go more, I can afford a little more freedom to say, okay, I don't need to ride this ride 17 times. I can ride it 10 times because I know I'll be back and I can go sit down and eat a meal somewhere new. There are so many restaurants that I want to try that, I've got a huge list on my phone of just like all these different places I want to eat. And so there's just so many new experiences you can have at the Disney parks. And I truly do not think any two trips have been the same. Even if they're trips I've taken with the same people, and maybe only a year or two apart, they're still so different and hold so many unique memories that I just want to make more of those memories. And I want to be back to experience it again.
I guess I'm not saying I second that. I guess I third it at this point, because there are so many things that you said with which I agree, both of you. But one thing that I think as an adult you really notice, and Marisa, your love of Animal Kingdom, this plays a part in it. And what you were saying about just meandering, Sarah, in Disneyland, I didn't get the details at the Disney parks when I was 5 years old, when I was 8 years old. I didn't realize in Liberty Square that the shutters were crooked because they were supposed to be held on by leather because they needed the metal for the war effort. Those details are what made me fall in love with the parks again as an adult. And I 100% agree with what you said, Sarah, about not hating change. There's a lot of hate on the internet every time Disney does something new and every time something gets replaced. We all know I love Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and we still have it at Disneyland, but now we don't have it at Walt Disney World. Is that a change I would have made if I were CEO of Disney? No, it's not. But they hit more than they miss on the new additions. And it is those new additions that keep me coming back all the time, because if it was the same park from 1987, I would have no reason to keep going back again. And the festivals at Epcot that keep Epcot fresh, even while Epcot is in this permanent almost state of construction right now, it still makes Epcot a destination because there are these festivals. And I wouldn't have appreciated that as a kid. When I was 12 years old, I wouldn't have wanted to try I just wanted my chicken nuggets and I wanted to get on to the next ride. And Epcot is something that as an adult I appreciate more. Animal Kingdom, while I would have loved seeing the animals when I was a kid, I wouldn't have appreciated the detail that goes into every little moment of Animal Kingdom. So I definitely think that there are things that keep bringing adults to the parks.
Yeah, I'm going to second all of that.
We're going to continue this conversation with Sarah and Marisa on next week's episode of the show, but I definitely wanted my wife Courtney to be a part of this milestone episode, so I thought I would have her join us for a dining review. Thanks for being here, Court.
Thanks, Rick. It's always fun talking some food.
Today we're talking about Cityworks Eatery and Poorhouse. This is at Disney Springs in Walt Disney World, and this is a really great place, especially if you like that bar atmosphere. When Courtney and I went, it was for their brunch hours, which go until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturdays and Sundays. But we were able to order an appetizer off of the regular menu. I got the pretzel bites for $11. It's sea salt and IPA cheese sauce. They were really good, but I will tell you this, they're really greasy and buttery. So just be prepared for them to be a little messier than your normal pretzel bites. But this was a great way to start our meal because our entrees, while really good, weren't huge. So having an appetizer was a good way to start off everything. Then we each got something off the brunch menu, and I'm going to give you some of the items we didn't get off of the brunch menu because they have some real fun names. There's definitely a music theme happening here. For the shareables, which I guess is more like their appetizers, they have the John Bon Jovi cinnamon roll, the Donut Stop Believin', and then some other items like Kung Pao cauliflower, buffalo chicken dip, and more. But then these are the main items that we didn't try, picking up on that music theme. The Sweet Child O' Mine, French toast and Bailey's cream cheese, the Johnny Hash, White Wedding, the Clash Smash, Easy Like Sunday Morning, Mother's Little Helper, Love Me Two Times, Breakfast in America, Locks and Roll, The Boss, and the Let It BLTE. So if you like puns and dad jokes, you're going to love the brunch items here at Cityworks. Courtney got the Chimi Hendrix for $18. This is a breakfast chimichanga with scrambled eggs, bacon, sausage, green onion, pico de gallo, smoked cheddar, chipotle salsa roja, fried flour tortilla, and cheesy potato casserole. This sounds like a lot, Court. How was it?
It was really good. So the cheesy potatoes are the side, and then everything else you named is in this dish. But it was really good. The individual parts I could tell were good, and then everything coming together also tasted very flavorful. One thing I will note is that it was a lot spicier than I was expecting it to be. So I believe it was that red sauce on the very outside of the chimichanga, that if I got a bite that had a little less of that, then it was a little less spicy. I like some spice, but not a ton, usually mild.
And I believe that's the chipotle salsa roja.
Right, so that was just a little spicier than I expected, a little spicy for me. But I still enjoyed it. Now, for the price, I would say it was good, it was flavorful, I enjoyed it, and it was actually big, and I got very full. But I might say that for the price, it's a little pricey.
And as somebody who loves 90s music, I had to get the What's the Story Morning Glory for $18 based on the basically perfect album from Oasis. These are breakfast tacos with scrambled eggs, bacon, green onion, smoked tomatoes, chipotle maple glaze, smoked cheddar, white corn tortillas, and cheesy potato casserole. Obviously, anybody who's been listening to the show for a while knows I'm a vegetarian. All I had to do was ask for no bacon. Truth be told, the first time they brought it out, they forgot and there was bacon on it, but I noticed it. They took it back and gave me a fresh one with no bacon. These tacos were really, really good. I think, like Courtney said, the $18 price tag, it was a little too much for what I got, but everything tasted great, and when you're at Walt Disney World, you expect to pay a little more for food, but I really, really liked these tacos. So on another occasion, I was able to go with our friend Jeff from the blog Magical Pursuit. We went during regular lunch hours during the week, so they didn't have the brunch menu. Off of the appetizers menu, he got the fried pickles for $10, kosher dill, beer battered, and ranch dressing. He says this is one of his favorite things to get anywhere on Walt Disney World property. Just one of those items that mixes a whole bunch of flavor palettes, and for some reason, they come together perfectly and just make a really great appetizer. I got the Impossible Burger for $19, shredded iceberg, vine-ripened tomatoes, red onion, vegan roasted garlic horseradish aioli. Now that is made vegan upon request, so you have to ask specifically for the vegan roasted garlic horseradish aioli if you are a vegan or if you just want to have a completely plant-based meal, served with olive oil parsley fries or a side salad. Of course, I got the fries. I always love a good Impossible Burger, and this garlic horseradish aioli really brought out all of the flavors of everything else that was on the burger, and the fries were great. Cityworks is one of my favorite places to eat. I think it's a sneaky, great restaurant that if you didn't know about it, you might not think of trying it. It's not overly Disneyfied. And there was a time after the closure of the NBA experience and before Cirque du Soleil returned when it felt like this was almost in the middle of nowhere and people wouldn't even get down to this end of Disney Springs. Now that Cirque du Soleil is back and some things are starting to kick up again and we're getting bigger and bigger crowds, I think more people are learning about Cityworks at Disney Springs. Courtney, thank you so much for joining me, even though you didn't get to talk a whole lot on this version. But thank you for joining me. We always love having you on the show.
Thanks so much. Great to be here as always.
In addition to the three awesome women who are on this episode with me today, I want to thank Jillian, Scott, Ken, Kiki, Amanda, Miranda, Christina, Sunny, Ty, Melinda, Jeff, Carmen, Danielle, Sean, Jay, Haley, Jocelyn, James, my mother, and a whole lot of other people I may have forgotten. If I forgot you, I am so sorry. But all of you have really helped make the podcast possible, and it means the world to me that all of you are in my life. For my wife, Courtney, Sarah from Seattle, and Marissa from Chicago, I'm Rick Doherty. I want to thank you so much as well for an entire year's worth of support. We look forward to another 365 days of talking Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Universal Orlando Resort, and many other travel destinations. Sarah and Marissa will be back next Thursday to continue our conversation. In honor of the one-year anniversary, we'll also finally have the giveaway I've been promising for a while. This would have happened months ago, but I keep finding more Disney and Universal related items that I want to keep adding to the package. There will be other things, of course, but this giveaway will include Disney pins, festival specific items, an annual pass holder magnet, and even a popcorn bucket. No, not that popcorn bucket, but there will be some Figment related items. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel to hear about how to win that prize. We'll be starting the giveaway in episode 53 next Thursday. This has been episode 52 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Have a great week.